We move on to the other big conversation we had planned for today, and that is again our demand for criminalization of marital rape. To recognize rape when it happens between a couple, when it's the husband who rapes his wife, to recognize that also as rape and nothing else, just because the man has a marriage license. Now, why again am I picking this up? We did this conversation a few weeks ago, but we speak about it again today, and we will every time there is such instance that occurs where a woman loses out on reprieve, relief and justice because the law is so flawed in our country. I am talking to you about now this case from Chhattisgarh, where the woman was harassed for dowry, physically abused, and she went ahead and filed a case against her husband and her in-laws. She alleged also that her husband made unnatural physical relations, forced sexual relations with her. He forced himself upon her without her consent. There were also other charges of harassment against the family, dowry as well, cruelty. And while those are recognized and legitimized in our country and as per our constitution, sadly, there isn't much that the courts can do when it comes to the charge of marital rape. And so the court said that none of the ingredients to constitute offence under Section 376 are spelt out. In India, marital rape is not recognized, and the same isn't an offence. The Section 377 of the IPC cannot be said to be erroneous at the stage of framing of charge, and that the dominant intention of the offender to derive unnatural sexual satisfaction and sexual pleasure would constitute as carnal intercourse because they are married. When will this change? When will we understand and recognize it in law that it doesn't matter whether you're legally married to someone, it still doesn't give you a right to force yourself on her. That's as simple as it gets. Is it now time to relook at this law and get rid of it and criminalize marital rape just like rape is in every other situation? Geeta Luthra, Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court, joins me this evening. Sriram Parakkat, Advocate with the Supreme Court of India. Barkhat Rehan, Equal Rights Activist, joins me this evening. Neha Singhal, Senior Resident Fellow at the Vidhi Center for Legal Policy, also with me. Thank you so much. Geeta Luthra, this was also a part of the Justice Verma report. The much debated, the much talked about report, and a significant part of it was also to talk about this aspect. Now, why is it that, our country still doesn't seem to be ready to recognize marital rape as rape?
So the reason, I believe, is because our investigative tools are so flawed. I think in principle, no one would disagree with the point that you are making, that anything against the force of any other human being has to be a criminal penal offense. In the case of rape, more so, because women have only now started coming into their own, and therefore rape, among other gender offenses, has been an offense. Marital rape, however, is not. Now, if you look at the national data, which is the NCRBC data, you'd see that more and more cases, there is an acquittal in rape cases of promise to marry and such like cases where the finding is that the case was for some other reason. Now, in marital rape, how do you prove? And that doesn't mean there are many offenses where it is difficult to prove. For example, dowry death also happens in the confine of a home, but you still make it an offence under 304B. So, what do you do with marital rape? Ultimately, everyone recognizes it as a misdemeanor under the Domestic Violence Act. Sexual abuse, physical abuse, economic abuse, verbal abuse all come under the definition of domestic violence. Then why not as a penal consequence? So the only reason is that our investigative machinery is poor, and though we've been talking of overhauling it, we have still not overhauled. And that's why, until you have better investigation, you are scared to have it on the statute book because of false implication, because it happens in the confines of a home. So, firstly, the principle of it all, marital rape should be offense. Then comes the practicality of it all. You have an investigative machinery which starts at the level of sub inspectors, inspectors, and constables, head constables, sometimes who are not trained in the tools of investigation. And when you have marital disputes, then each party is ready to make whatever you can throw against each other, whether it be the husband or the wife. And they will throw allegations of adultery, they will throw allegations of being unsound of mind, etc. There'll be a whole array which one person will throw at the other. Some of it will be true, some will be false. Now you have to take the grain from the chaff. How do you do it in a criminal case? Through police investigation, and that should be proper so that there is not false implication.
Yes.
It is, I think, only this reason and this reason alone which keeps marital offense for rape from being put on the statute book in the Indian Penal Code along with other offenses of rape. That's what I believe.
Well, the government says that the law may, this bringing in such kind of a law may disturb the institution of marriage. The marital rape to wife may not be the same to others. So, I mean, I don't know if that means that if you carry out a crime with your wife, it's lesser of a crime than to do it with a stranger. The law could be misused to harassing husbands. And we must not follow Western countries blindly. We need moral and social awareness to stop the act. By that logic, we should then, Barkhat Rehan, since you seem to so vociferously agree with the government, let's do away with a lot of other laws as well where false cases happen. I'm sure you'll be glad if the dowry law, even in cases of murder, we should just do away with all of these cases of cruelty against women, where how do you prove? And there are always false cases, molestation, so many false cases, sexual harassment in office spaces, so many false cases. Why do we have these laws at all in our country?
Exactly. Firstly, I'd like to bring in here that all the laws should be made gender neutral. Make it for everyone, protection for everyone, man, women and transgenders. Now I come to back to your point of marital rape, which we have been discussing right now. So it is going to destabilize the whole institution of marriage. I agree to this. 100% I agree to this. Already 498A has been misused more than 90%. Now if you bring this another law, which is already covered under Domestic Violence Act, Section 376, Section 377. So if you want another one more law for to cover only marital rape, which is already covered, what what are we expecting? It will be 100% misused. Mind you, I said more than 100% misused.
Sorry, I want to
All
go back to the
husbands-
point that you made about destabilizing the institution of marriage. How?
Because one night when you have sex with the consent form, I don't know what sort of a consent form which we are going to get, then which camera we are going to put in the bedroom, or we are going to ask a thanedar to come and stand in the bedroom and witness whether it was a consensual act or it was a forced one. Because maybe in anger, or maybe when the wife doesn't receive a gift which she wanted in the daytime, she requested the husband and the husband didn't bring the gift, or maybe there is some other dispute between them, and then she finally says in the morning that he raped me. So then finally that man will end up in jail, which will ruin the whole marriage.
Well, if the wife is actually willing to do that, I think that marriage is already gone. It's not a marriage worth saving already. If on the other hand you say that somebody is allowed to force himself upon her and she should not have a legal recourse for that, then also the marriage is destroyed. Acknowledging it,
What
Neha
about the
Singhal.
woman who forces herself on a man?
Okay.
What about the wives who force themselves on man?
I am with you completely. If you want to talk
many
about gender neutral laws, I am with you completely. I am simply
are we
saying
going
that
to-
you need to recognize rape
Are we
even when
going
it
to video
happens
class?
between a married
My only
couple. Calm
question-
down, Barkha, calm down. I have two
My
more
only
panelists.
question
Allow
is,
me to go
are
to
we
my
going
two
to
other
video class
panelists
now?
as well. If you can hear me, please
my
allow
only
me to
question,
go to my two other panelists as well. Neha Singhal's with me as well. Neha, does this argument, how do you tackle this argument that for the fear of false cases, we don't even want to recognize that they could be real crimes?
Look, I've always said that false cases or a fear of false cases cannot be the impetus to not enact a particular offense or a particular law. You could have false charges for murder, you could have false charges for drugs, you could have false charges for anything, and that is no reason to not have a law. I have always said that criminal law serves a very particular function, that is to express society's condemnation towards a certain act, saying that as a society together, we think that this particular thing is bad and we disapprove of it as a society. And marital rape, and it being a specific exception, even post the 2013 amendment, where you increase the age of statutory of consent to 18, marital rape is still, the exception to marital rape is still at 15, that any sexual intercourse with a woman who is a wife over the age of 15 is not rape. This is just saying that the woman is a property of a man, and saying that having marital rape is going to destabilize the institution of marriage. Sure, let's have that. Let's have an institution which is based on equality and not on property. I would be very happy to destabilize that institution of marriage, absolutely. And I think Barkhat Rehan said that 498 is misused.
Then ban marriages.
I'm sorry?
Then ban marriages. Ban them.
I don't know what, if you are saying that marriages is equal to man having ownership and property over his wife, then yes, we must ban marriages. If there is, you are an equal rights activist, and if you say this, that there is a property ownership of a man over a woman, yes, must ban marriages. I am completely with you. And two, 498A misuse, I don't think it is being misused. From what we know, 498A usually ends in acquittal or discharges. There are hardly any convictions under 498A. It's this song and dance that men have
Supreme Court itself has observed that is legal terrorism. 498A is legal terrorism. More than 90% cases are false, and you're saying that it's okay.
Yes, and I'm also saying that the Supreme Court is wrong. Yes, I am saying. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I have data.
So I didn't know that there are more Gyanis over here than Supreme Court.
Well, you do know now. It's good to know new things every day. So, yes.
Okay, finish your point, Neha. Yes, go ahead.
Yes.
Finish your point.
So, I was saying that marital rape, when said that it's already covered under the Domestic Violence Act or under Section 377. 377 is carnal intercourse against the course of nature, which usually would be anal sex that would get covered under 377 and not rape. And to have a specific exception under 376, when the 2013 amendment happened, when you introduced all these other offenses under the Indian Penal Code, like voyeurism, stalking, etc., to keep marital rape specially as an exception is very telling that we as a society think that it's still okay for men to have ownership over women. And I think that's deeply problematic.
No.
I think marital rape should be recognized, even if it leads to not enough cases being filed. That could be one problem, or some false cases being filed. But I think investigative machinery eventually can take care of that. But as a lawmaking process...
Okay, so
if the wife has...
1 minute, Barkha, allow me to moderate the panel. No, 1 minute. I think you need to be told, maybe it's been a while. Maybe it's been a while. Can I just talk to my viewers? If Barkha Trayan has no interest in listening to me, I have no interest in giving her a platform to speak here. Thank you very much. Maybe she's forgotten, maybe she doesn't know because it's been a while since she's been on an urban debate conversation. But Barkha Trayan, simple rules of conversation here on this show, on this channel, is that we allow everybody else to talk and finish their points. And when you have a point to make, you can raise your hand. When I can come to you, I will, and I will allow you to make your point. Now, there is one panelist who's been very patiently listening to everybody. Let me go across to Sriram Parakat. Sriram, one point that Geeta Luthra made about the difficulty of investigation and not having the tools to do that. If we have to explore and resolve that problem, even there, it has to start with recognizing that marital rape is a problem.
Thank you, Tanvi, for that question. And also, I was just reading some of those texts which you've put on the screen. So one of the tests says that marital rape is recognized in India, or it's allowed in India, or it's legal in India. I would beg to disagree that it's not legal today. But what happens today is that the definition of Section 375 gives an explanation, which is explanation 2, which says that they were exempting the husband and the wife. It's not that it's recognizing an offense on the body of a woman, but it's just that the definition of rape, we are not at the moment allowing this to come in. Secondly, as a Supreme Court lawyer, I see 2 High Court judgments today, one that of Chhattisgarh High Court. So it's not the Chhattisgarh High Court's judgment which brings in the issue of marital rape and suddenly legalizes it. These were issues which were there much before, we were born. So I would say that as I have to agree with the High Court's decision, because that is just interpreting the law as it is today.
Correct.
The law is what I was just mentioning earlier on, which is the explanation to 375. I just have to say one more point. While I agree with the Chhattisgarh High Court judgment, I would also wish to agree with the Kerala High Court judgment, which says that marital rape is something which you need to lament about, and it's the ground for divorce. And that's a very positive development. So while we say that it's unfortunate that, we do not recognize marital rape as an offense in India, I would say that it's very fortunate that we have a Kerala High Court judgment which says, let's lament about this as a social evil and let's consider this as a ground for divorce within the idea of cruelty. As to what is, good for legislations to come out and, how to make it criminal, I would say that we should not enrage ourselves into a legislation. Rather, we should engage ourselves into a legislation. We should look at the social milieux of our country, cultural milieux of our country, and have data, as someone from the panel was suggesting, and then research about it, brainstorm about it, and then consider whether criminalizing is the first solution. There are so many things to which it's already criminalized.
I will very politely and not in an enraged manner, but object to you saying that we shouldn't enrage ourselves into legislating anything. And I don't think anybody is doing that. In fact, for years together, for decades now, this has been deliberated and discussed exhaustively inside our parliament by biggest of the judicial committees, by the likes of Justice Verma and Gopal Subramaniam on the same panel, exhaustively discussing it. Like you said, this isn't a new problem. None of us can blame the Chhattisgarh High Court for the ruling they gave, because that is the law. And the law doesn't recognize this as a crime. My point is, why should it not be recognized as a crime? Now, where do you stand on that?
Tanvi, one of those things is I would like to think that recognizing something as a crime, criminalizing and decriminalizing perhaps is not the first thing or the only thing in any manner to deal with a social issue.
Actually, it's
Especially
not
when you
something,
have
it's rape.
people like...
It's not something, it's
Uh,
not, it's rape. It's forcefully having sex with somebody who's not wanting to do so. It's rape. It's a very, very brutal crime.
You're right when
It's not something.
You're absolutely right when you yeah, I take it back. You're absolutely right when you say that rape is not something. It's extremely important. So therefore, whether to consider it as an offense in a particular cultural ambience which we have in our country, should we hurry into that is the question. As you said, there have been debates over a period of time, but there are also arguments like, is our society mature enough? Is our investigating agencies mature enough? Is the evidence collecting mechanism good enough to have, it's obviously an advancement to recognize marital rape as a crime, but are we mature enough as a society to have that step forward? Is a question. I think Geeta Luthra said that investigating agency is the problem. There are people who say that false cases are there all over the place. I wouldn't agree to the fact that just having false cases being accused against people is a reason for not to legislate, but I would say that's a factor to consider.
I don't think there are these factors to consider as far as this law is concerned, because at the end of the day, rape is just that. And being married doesn't give a legal license to anybody, be whatever your gender, to anybody to commit this crime, Neha Singhal. So how do we resolve some of the issues that are being raised here?
May I just, so I think I do agree with Sriram partially, where you're saying that we shouldn't hurry into criminalization or decriminalization and conversations like that, because as a society, I think we rush into criminalizing things very quickly. And sometimes that has a detrimental effect on just the law and the society and grassroots investigation. But are we mature as a society? Are we equipped as a society to have marital rape in our provision? Also, I think is not a fair question to ask, because are we equipped in our investigative agencies to have cyber crimes or porn that is being uploaded, revenge porn that's being uploaded by men of women and things, and police isn't equipped to take those crimes as well or to handle those crimes as well, but we still have them. So I think sometimes law makes the first step, and that step then it spurns action and things move, because law now tells you that we disagree or we condemn or we disapprove. And I think in this particular situation, given how long we've been having these conversations, I think it's time to have marital rape as a criminal offense, to say that it's not okay for a man to subject a woman whenever he wants, as per his will, to sexual intercourse, and that she does have a say, and just being married does not give him a free license. I think Geeta ma'am also mentioned something about promise to marry cases and how so many of those are rape cases. I just want to say that promise to marry cases make a majority of rape cases in most of our trial courts, and the point there is that sexual intercourse was had on the promise to get married, and then the man didn't go through the promise and they didn't get married, and that's an offense. I think to think of marriage as this central thing, that if you're not married and you have sexual intercourse, of course it must be rape, and if you're married and you've had sexual intercourse but not consented, of course it can't be rape. I think we need to change our thinking on this. I think this ownership is a bit problematic and it needs to be changed.
So that's exactly what the Kerala High Court said, and Sriram was referring to that order, where and it was actually a ruling on grounds for divorce, but the order did go on to say that marital rape is a licentious husband disregarding a wife's autonomy is marital rape. So in a sense, at least saying that yes, this is what it is. Marital rape falls under physical and mental cruelty, and it occurs when a husband thinks he owns the wife's body. That is the mindset, I think, that our panelists are referring to, that needs to be gradually addressed in the society. A husband cannot claim any superior right over wife, and sexual acts against wife's will is marital rape. So Geeta Luthra, you started this conversation by saying one thing that needs to be addressed is the investigation tools. How do we do that?
So I think how we do that is basically we have to have a more literate police. We have a more trained police. And one of the most important aspects, I think, is to have more scientific tools. All these cases which come up for investigation, which fail in investigation, are most often cases where there are loopholes, and that's why you get a poor conviction rate. I think the law should be certain, and this was the English principle, the common law principle, that 99 guilty may go free, but one innocent person should not be falsely convicted. Now, how do we assure that? If we take that as the mantra, that no innocent man have to even face, and therefore it's not simply, and there I was disagreeing with one of the panelists, it's not simply enough that there is an acquittal. Going through the ignominy of a trial is as bad as a conviction. And that's why you need better investigation. You need a honest police enforcement and investigative agency that will not just look that let's pad up this case. If it thinks it's a case for discharge, it should have the courage to discharge. If it thinks it's a case of charge, irrespective of the consequences, it should then go ahead and make charges. Okay. The point that I was agreeing with one of our panelists on marital rape being a ground for divorce, this has existed from time immemorial. So this is nothing new. Forcing yourself on a woman, your wife, is an act. Forcing yourself on any person is a criminal act, but forcing yourself on your wife in a matrimonial misdemeanor is a misdemeanor under the Domestic Violence Act and under the marriage laws. But the question then is it's not a criminal offense.
Yes, but now, if you can get convinced that this happened enough to approve and to give divorce, then where comes the question to say, oh, but it wasn't a crime? It could have been a crime 6 months ago when they were not married, but now it's not because they got married. That somewhere has to get fixed. I am out of time. I wish I had more time, but there was a lot of breaking news that had to be addressed, which is why the time got truncated for this debate. Thank you to our panelists for joining us. Viewers, we're going to pick this conversation up as many times as we can. Every time we find an instance, whether it's the Kerala High Court verdict, which did recognize this marital rape leading to physical and mental cruelty as grounds for divorce, to the Chhattisgarh High Court judgment, which said that no, in the law, marital rape is not recognized and therefore that charge will not stand, to every other instance, to the time when the government stood up and took a clear stand to say Indian society is not ready to accept or recognize marital rape because our marriage institution is very sacred. So we rather keep away these things, brush them under the carpet, not recognize them, then give arguments of the fear of false cases, the ending of marriages, and not recognize that this too is a crime, and that a wife's body doesn't belong to the husband just because they signed on a piece of paper to spend their lives together. Think about it. Thank you for joining us.